So thank you so much for joining us. This is our CLPHA Education Working Group webinar on addressing school attendance with PHAs. We're really excited to have you. So my name is Micah, and I am a fellow here at the Council of Large Public Housing Authorities, or CLPHA, and I'm stepping in for Abra, who is our Senior Program and Policy Manager while she is out on leave. A few tech specs to go over. You will be on listen-only mode for the duration of the webinar. So any questions or comments you have while the presentations are happening, feel free to write those in the chat box, and we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. In the top left-hand corner, you'll see a shared files box. There I have posted resources from AttendanceWorks about absenteeism and why PHAs should care about this issue. So feel free to download that and share it with your colleagues. So today's webinar, we are going to hear about the ways in which PHAs can help to reduce chronic absenteeism among their residents and resources for practitioners who are working in this space. Before I introduce our presenters, I'm going to pull up a poll, and I'm going to ask attendees to complete the poll. We want to get a better sense of where everyone's coming from. So if you could take a look at your screen and answer the question. This is really targeted for housing authorities, people who are working on the ground in this space. If this doesn't really apply to you, feel free to write any relevant comments in the chat box, or else just hold tight while these answers roll in. So I'll give you all another minute. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to end the voting and I'll share results. Okay, so it looks like we have people kind of all across the board. A good number of people are distributing written information about the importance of attendance. People are partnering with other organizations, using incentives. So a little bit of everything. And we're getting some more comments in the chat box, which I will get to in a little bit. Okay, great. So without further ado, I will now introduce our presenters. Today we have Cara Ianni and Ted December from the King County Housing Authority. They will be presenting on the strategy KCHA is pursuing to address chronic absenteeism among their households. Cara is the Educational Programs Coordinator, and Ted December is the Senior Resident Services Manager for Educational Initiatives at King County. We will also be hearing from Sue Fothergill, who is the Associate Director for Policy, and Senior Fellow Maria Casey, hopefully if we can get all the tech issues resolved, from the National Nonprofit AttendanceWorks. So I will now turn it over to Cara and Ted.
Okay, thank you. So I hope everyone can hear me. And as you heard, my name is Ted December, and I am the Senior Manager of Educational Initiatives and Youth Programs at King County Housing Authority, and we're very excited to participate in this webinar today with AttendanceWorks and share with you some of the exciting work that we have going on. So with that, moving on to the next slide, really quickly wanted to share with you how we are partnering with family schools and communities to support strong attendance. And so I think most of you are all on the call today because you acknowledge the role that housing can play in addressing chronic absenteeism, and AttendanceWorks has a really nice document to help us there. But what this slide does is helps kind of paint the picture for kind of our beliefs and where we're coming from and what we're trying to work on. And so some of the issues that call us to action is that, ultimately, kids missing too much school leads to them falling behind. And so one of the root things that we can all do together as a community is try to support kids and families getting to school every day together on time. And we also know that through several data matches that we have over the last 10 years, that kids who are in our housing programs are disproportionately more absent than their peers. And so we certainly feel that we can play a role in addressing that disparity. And then on top of it, Washington State ranks near the bottom for chronic absenteeism rate. So in general, as a state, we have a real issue, and Cara and I kind of frame this as there's something cultural kind of going on in our state. Like, what are we doing? How do we act? What do we say? What's the culture that we're creating around kids going to school every day? And lastly, the last point there, our leverage and size as a houser, and I think that this also might be true for other folks listening on the call, is that you might encompass an entire county, multiple municipalities, and so because housers and housing authorities are often unique in their size and geography, we're able to play a role in convening people and trying to bring awareness to the issue. KCHA has 14,000 kids, about 7,000 of them are in federal subsidy programs, and others 7,000 in our workforce housing. So that's all totaled around 20,000 children across 17 school districts. And so for us, it's a large scale, and we feel that this is an opportunity for us to really try to get some traction on a real root cause, where we have a large number of students and families that we can interact with. And moving on to this slide, very quickly, Cara is going to go into the detail about this, but I want to kind of share our attendance theory of change. And essentially, what we believe is that if we are equipping families with information and tools, and we're able to support the community capacity to create tiered networks of supports, which I think Attendance Works might go into detail further, and if we convene partners to align these strategies and to create resources and to look at data together, then we're going to see these increased short-term outcomes, which are things like skills of schools, families, and community members, which Cara will get into a little bit around our campaign. And then the long-term outcomes that we hope to see through all of this work is that eventually we want to see our cross-sector partners working in alignment with their efforts and their resources to support families. So we are beginning to see large institutions begin to work together, plan campaigns together, advertise together after about 5 years of these types of conversations. And so we're starting to see some results there. We would see sustainable funding for the required resources. I think anyone that is working on attendance realizes this is a really high leverage issue, but it is something that is not necessarily funded. And so how do we create sustainable funding for the innovative initiatives that schools and communities want to take on? And ultimately, we want to see reduced chronic absenteeism. And so, broad strokes, that's really how we are thinking about change and how we are trying to impact better outcomes and results for our kids. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cara, and she's really going to spend the next bit of time with you sharing our attendance campaign. which is really lives in one tier of our multi-tiered strategies. But we thought we would really go deep with you and kind of share the campaign and how we build that out in hopes that it might help other communities who already do campaigns, or it might inspire communities to do campaigns this upcoming fall. So with that, Cara, I turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Ted. I'm excited to be telling you guys about our attendance work today. So like Ted said, we're starting off broad and we'll be diving more and more deep into the details of our awareness campaign. So we support our absence reduction strategies in many ways and working with a wide variety of partners, and these include school districts, municipalities, community organizations, residents, and our co-workers from other departments. And so on this slide, this lists some of the main ways that we accomplish our work. So we do organize an attendance awareness campaign in order to equip our families with information and tools on both how and why to avoid school absences. We also know, however, there's no silver bullet for reducing chronic absenteeism. So one thing we do is we work with several schools throughout our service area to build their capacity to form and activate a best practice called attendance teams, and convene those teams across the different schools and school districts to facilitate them learning from each other. We also convene community partners across many sectors through regional planning events. So for today, with the time that we have, I'll be speaking in more detail about the first and third strategies, which mainly embodies our awareness campaign and how we rally the troops across various partnerships to align messages and outreach. I will say a tiny bit about our school-based attendance teamwork towards the end of our presentation. However, simply to share some of the positive outcomes of the work on that front. All right, so back in 2015, KCHA launched our first effort towards a large-scale effort to build our families' awareness on how and why to avoid school absences. Since then, we have grown a community-wide attendance awareness campaign that's organized around 2 tiers of communication. So we, KCHA, work through our own channels of communication to our residents to distribute messaging both to where they live and in their local community. We also have 15 of our housing sites where KCHA contracts with several community-based organizations, or CBOs, to lead after-school programming. And so over these past 3 years, we have worked with our CBO partners to provide targeted attendance-related activities and education to the KCHA youth and their parents as part of after-school programming. KCHA's support of our programs operating out of our spaces has consisted of helping them access quality communication materials, helping them access pre-existing learning activities for adults and youth. And we also have provided small amounts of funds for supplies and incentives to support the attendance work they're doing. We also work through our various departments. And so I'm assuming that your PHAs are probably similar to ours in that we have a resident services department, for example, but we also have housing management, we have Section 8, we have many different departments. And so one thing that we do a lot is to coordinate their efforts so the messages are aligned throughout the different departments. We do a mailer in late August, and it's an informational flyer, and it also has a calendar tracking tool that's all mailed in the September rent statements to our family. For housing management, our property managers play a role because they post banners and posters in community spaces, places like laundry rooms and in the office, and they also post yard signs that have our attendance messaging on our properties, our family sites specifically. In our Section 8 department, our residents receive communications via their housing specialist during the month of September. So in the month of September, we help our Section 8 staff, be prepared to have some simple messaging around, school started, and it's important that kids attend every day, and provide them with resources they can distribute. We have a large banner and handouts in our Section 8 lobby. We also have workforce housing. These are our asset managed properties that are not public housing that we own, however. And we have our landlord liaisons that work with properties we do not own, but where we have large numbers of our Section 8 families living. And so we activate those departments to work, those staff here, to work with those properties, whether we own them or not, so they too have signs up, and those families that live there also get messaging. So that's a little bit about our Tier 1 communications, just really leveraging what we have going already, any of our contacts that we have with residents in September. We also work through our youth programs. And so here's some examples of some of the fun things that happen in those after-school programs. Our kids in the after-school programs in Shoreline with the Center for Human Services, they completed an art project that involved them making a pledge to strive for less than 5, no more than 5 days in the school year. And another program, it was a family-focused back-to-school night, and school representatives attended to help parents sign up for the online parent portal, where parents can get information on their children's attendance, as well as homework and track test scores. Another of our programs held a family night that centered on attendance awareness, and the kids were learning about attendance through interactive games and quizzes, and a lot of these can be actually found on Attendance Works website, while the parents met with school principals and staff to talk about the impact of absenteeism on academics and life outcomes. So those are some of the things that we do within our own spaces. Our coworkers in our after-school programs are really easy targets for us to work with because we're already in close communication and coordination with them all the time. But we're also aware that the rest of the community, both schools and community partners, have an essential role to play in reducing absenteeism, especially in light of Washington State's apparent culture of missing a lot of school that Ted mentioned earlier. As many of you already know, September is National Attendance Awareness Month, and we use this opportunity as a way to bring together cross-sector partners in the spring. So we do this early to bring them together to coordinate and align activities for the upcoming start of the next school year and Attendance Awareness Month. We've done these events for 2 years now and are currently planning similar events for this spring. And so, in 2007, we had 100 individuals from 45 organizations attend. Last year, we had more, including 17 new organizations that participated. And we've had folks representing early learning, our K-12 schools, out of school time, health organization, cultural groups, government, housing, and social services. When we bring them all together, to do a couple things. The meetings are, I think they're 2.5 or 3 hours long, and they're pretty long, they're pretty intense. We spend the first hour really highlighting local efforts. So different partners are invited to give brief, 10-minute presentations on their own efforts as models for others to be inspired. And then we have a lot of planning time for individual sectors to get together, to learn from each other, and then do some cross-sector groups so folks can coordinate activities within their service communities and create these regional plans of how they're going to work together. How KCHA supports this is we post an online toolkit. I'm happy to share that information, the link to that, where there's all sorts of materials for folks to use, and those regional plans are there for easy access. Finally, as folks leave, they write down and submit their individual commitments for what they are going to do for Attendance Awareness Month. And I email these things back as a reminder to them in mid-August, along with the regional plan. So we help to keep things coordinated. Some of those commitments you can see are categorized in that graph. A lot of partners have committed to partnering with other organizations, as well as distributing communications to families, and also communicating in any events they already have going on, say in September, and including attendance awareness messaging. Less are using data or using incentives or doing trainings for coworkers. So we hope to see those numbers increase as we continue this work. One thing that we want to know is, how is this campaign working? So in late 2016, we did a small survey of our public housing residents in 2 of our pretty large public housing residents where there's several hundred children that live in each of these. So there were door-to-door surveys that were actually done by our own residents. 122 surveys were completed. And we also had these surveys going on at family events to learn, if parents are actually reading the materials, if they noticed any of the campaign materials. So 42% of our residents remembered receiving the mailer, and 58% of them remembered the sign. So, so this was done several months after the campaign was completed. 89% of our residents who remembered the mailer said they read the materials, and 71% said they actually used the calendar tool to track absences. So we thought that was pretty good news. Parents were also asked if they learned anything about the connection between academic performance and absences, and if they learned anything about how to avoid absences, and the majority of them said that they did. So in case any of you are thinking of trying out any of these strategies in your own area, here's a handy timeline of how to plan how we plan all of the partner wrangling that we do around attendance awareness campaign. You'll see it starts off pretty soon, and so just next month we'll be starting to plan our kickoff events with some of our key school districts and community partners. In May and June is when we actually hold those events. We hold them in 3 different regions because we do cover such a large county area. And that's when we document the regional plans and partners' commitments and post all the resources online. In July and August, we work with leaders from those regional groups, those that have identified themselves as they want to be, partner wranglers as well in their own areas. And we send reminders and more resources to partners. And we also finalize the communication materials, and we send that mailer to residents in late August. In September, we get those plans going, so a lot of reminders and coordination between partners. I also send a weekly email with resources to all the partners that attend those regional kickoffs. And in October is a good time to send surveys out to residents or partners as to how things are going and what should be the next step. All right, 2 more slides. So before I conclude, I wanted to highlight our strategy of supporting schools to activate attendance teams. So attendance works actually has tons of resources on what these teams are and how to get them started. In short, they are school building based, and they consist of various roles within a school building, such as the administration, the counselor, the school nurse, teachers. They also often include families and community partners to participate in the team. And CLPHA is a member of these teams in schools where we have large populations of kids that attend that school. What the teams do is they develop and implement tiered strategies around reducing absenteeism. What's particularly special about what CLPHA does is that we convene these teams across several schools and several school districts in a quarterly peer learning network, so they can learn from each other. There is so much to say about this work that we don't have time for today. I could talk 2 hours on this. But I wanted to highlight the results at the bottom of this slide, where the chronic absenteeism rate of our students attending White Center Heights Elementary dropped from 18% to 9% over the course of 3 school years, working with an attendance team there. So something must be going right. Finally, I want to share a list of some of the various resources we have used to support our campaign efforts. Some are homegrown, some are from local partners, and several from Attendance Works, who will share their resources coming up next. So several things that we do use, are print materials, handouts, posters, banners, yard signs. We have social media posts from various sources, calendar tracking tools. Attendance Works actually has these self-assessment tools for schools and for out-of-school time, and I found this to be some of the most useful resources to see, how your group how they're doing currently on different ways to support this work and where you can identify areas for improvement. We also have examples of cheery activities to help people think about what they can do. Attendance Works has accounts in Toolkit as well as the Making the Case document. So that is it for KCHA's portion of today's webinar. I encourage anyone that had any questions to use the chat box or get my contact information from Micah, as I am more than happy to chat with any of you all in the future. So Micah, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Cara and Ted. That was wonderful. It's so awesome to hear what you guys are up to. Okay, so now I am going to quickly open Attendance Works presentation. I think this is it. Okay, and yeah, so I'm going to turn it over to Sue now from Attendance Works. Remember to keep writing in the chat box with questions and comments. Okay, so Sue, turning it over to you. And Sue, you may be muted because we're not hearing you. Okay, let's hold on one moment.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. So hi, good afternoon, everyone. Sue Fothergill here, and I just want to say I'm so thrilled to be able to be on this call today with Council of Large Public Housing Authorities and King County Housing Authority. Thank you so much for Cara and Ted. You all are such a tremendous inspiration, and I really appreciate how much you've leveraged the resources we do have available. I wanted to share, so Attendance Works advances student success and closes equity gaps by ensuring that students are able to attend school every day. I want to first start off with just a brief moment of framing of the national context around chronic absence and where we are today as a result of Every Student Succeeds Act. And I also want to share with everyone on this call some information about how chronic absence is now more commonly being defined by states as a result of ESSA and at the federal level through EdFacts. And then I really want to build on the excellent presentation from King County Housing Authority to share with you additional tools and resources that we do have on our website and how you can find those. But just briefly to get us started, chronic absence is when students lose on average just 2 days of instructional time each month for any reason. It is a critical early warning indicator that takes into account missed days due to legally accepted reasons such as the flu, unexcused absences like taking care of a sick sibling because your parents have to work, or when students are suspended from school due to an unsanctioned behavior. When those lost days add up to 10% or more of a student's days on roll, they are significantly more likely to miss major education milestones, from kindergarten readiness to graduation. As such, we now know that more than 8 million children are chronically absent nationally. And just recently, 36 states and the District of Columbia have adopted chronic absence. The measure I just shared with you is primarily the one that states are using. as a measure in their state ESSA plans. Elementary, Secondary, and Education Act plans that they had to prepare as a result of the Every Student Succeeds Act. To get a better sense of the chronic absence challenge in your community, you can use this mapping tool from the Hamilton Project at the Brookings Institute. The tool allows you to drill down to individual schools and explore their chronic absence data. Reducing chronic absence, especially for schools that enroll a significant population of students who live in poverty, require that communities take a systemic and data-driven approach to improving student attendance. Schools and communities can turn absenteeism around when they implement these 5 strategies with fidelity, ensuring that we have positive engagement, just as King County Housing Authority so wonderfully and adeptly shared with you. Actionable data, such as through the attendance teams that you heard them talk about. Capacity building, ensuring that people know and understand the research behind chronic absence, and then what are the specific strategies that they can put in place. And strategic partners, just as you heard King County Housing Authority talk about the relationship with other partners, such as after-school programs. And finally, shared accountability. King County Housing Authority strategies also align to the key strategies that I just described. They build trust among the partners to create shared accountability, to implement the attendance awareness campaign, and to put in place attendance teams. Beginning with the attendance awareness campaign, it is essential for a few reasons that I'd like to share with you. Motivated by the knowledge that a significant common variable among adolescents in the juvenile justice system was chronic absenteeism, California Attorney General Kamala Harris commissioned research to better understand what parents of chronically absent students understood about attendance and absenteeism. 1,000 parents were interviewed in California of parents of students who were chronically absent, and families that were spoken to spoke both English and Spanish as a first language. One of the findings that the researchers were able to identify was that parents significantly underestimated the number of year-end absences. When parents were asked whether their children missed about 2 days a month, parents of chronically absent students often responded yes. When researchers asked parents whether this added up to 10 or more days by the end of the school year, significantly less families were likely to say that those absences added up to that amount of lost instructional time. However, we know that it does. So one thing we learned was that parents aren't necessarily tracking the impact of or adding up the absences over time. Additionally, through the research, we found that parents were more likely to associate the importance of regular and consistent attendance with high school success, and they were less likely to know and understand the relationship between regular attendance and success all the way through a student's educational career, beginning with pre-kindergarten. Families often receive unclear information about attendance that doesn't help them to plan ahead, build relationships, or know what is a problematic level of absenteeism. Attendance Works has developed a student success plan to equip educators and other parent engagement staff to work with families to plan for their child's regular attendance, identify who their backup supports are, and to track their child's absenteeism. The My Family Health Bank is a great way to encourage peer relationships and the recognition of social capital within the community or the school. There are a range of ways that this tool can be utilized for prevention and intervention in your housing community. To access the Attendance Works student success plans, the messaging materials, videos, and exercises, and all the resources you heard King County Housing Authority refer to earlier, you can visit our resources page, and the materials to this specific strategy are located under positive engagement. I'll just provide a few more resources before we break and turn it back over to Micah. So the other area of work that King County Housing Authority shared with you is the importance of building and supporting community capacity. And we know that of all the drivers, health is one of the most significant. Community partners are particularly equipped to help support schools with developing strategies that can promote behaviors or put in place structural supports to reduce reduce health-related absences. We must remember that health-related chronic absenteeism is not an inevitable fact of childhood. There is much that can be done by the education community, the public health community, and by public housing authorities and housing partners to address this issue and relieve the lifelong burden it places on young children. These types of interventions can help provide students access to a healthier environment, a critical step in addressing chronic absenteeism and supporting students' lifelong wellness. It is important to recognize that there are first steps that are simple and achievable toward the integration of a whole child strategy delivered in partnership with public schools. A student's academic success is interwoven with their physical and mental health, and by ensuring that they have information, and by ensuring your families have the information they need to make good decisions about when their child should stay home from school due to illness, you can help to equip families with information that they need. Information on barriers, key strategies, toolkits, and attendance works web-based e-learning modules teaching attendance, along with information on putting in place attendance teams as King County Housing Authority did. They're on our website located under Building Capacity. I wanted to share with you the health strategies as a different intervention that public housing authorities and their partners can focus on. King County Housing Authority provided such an incredible array of opportunity in different ways that you could approach the work. And as they said in their presentation, there are so many different variables that contribute to chronic absenteeism. I wanted to build on their incredible presentation and also provide you a couple of other pathways to enter the work. In closing, I think it's incredibly important as you explore beginning your own chronic absence strategy and putting in place an attendance campaign in your communities to identify potential partners, thinking about creating a team that can help to be responsible for coordinating the work, and ensuring that staff of your partners and your staff are provided training and effective strategies for working with schools and nurturing a trauma-informed approach. The greater the size of the challenge, the more the partners that are needed. Partners for change can come from many sectors. When possible, identify existing initiatives and coalitions to work with. If there are none, identify partners who could potentially be recruited to your effort. The significance of taking this issue on cannot be overstated. Tackling the barriers that keep students out of school puts them on track to better outcomes in school and in life. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sue. This is a wonderful presentation. Okay, so now we're going to move into the question and answer portion of the webinar. We have one question that was typed into the chat box from Maria Rodriguez. Cara, I see that you answered it, but if you would like to expand on your answer, you're welcome to. Maria's question is, are the team members for the school attendance teams, are they part of the community or part of your staff?
Yeah, elaborate more on that. They are all of the above. Attendance teams are kind of complex, and what they aren't necessarily are the same groups of people getting together every single time. So in our experience, and it may be different for other people in other regions, the core members of the attendance teams are school staff. They're led by either a principal or assistant principal, and the other core members often are the office manager, counselor, the school nurse, and there also can be community-based partners that are placed within the schools. And this is a group that meets frequently. Our most successful attendance teams meet weekly. And they use individual student data as well as data patterns across grades and races, for example, to identify areas for improvement and to test interventions. So when it comes to, working with individual student data, that is somewhere where community partners, are not a part of that. For example, because of privacy laws. However, where CLPHA can play a role and other community partners can play a role is and parents and teachers as well, is a kind of a broader group of an attendance team that really works to develop like the tier 1 strategies or just the tier strategies overall using like the larger attendance trends. So without seeing any individual data, you may notice, for example, that kindergarten typically has a really high rate of chronic absenteeism, and work with community partners as well as parents to develop the interventions and the plans to address these patterns is what makes things really successful, especially the part of working with parents to vet what the strategies would be and whether they'll work or not.
Great, thank you. And Sue, I had a follow-up question for you on your presentation. I was wondering if Attendance Works is currently partnering with any public health organizations around attendance, and whether you feel that public health organizations have really see the connection between children's health and school attendance, if that's something that they are interested in working on or partnering with you on.
Absolutely, and I think they would be excellent partners with public housing authorities and housing advocates at the state and local level. So the American Pediatrics Association, or AAP, just released a statement within actually the last month on chronic absence and its usefulness as a vital statistic and an early warning indicator for pediatricians to use when talking with students and families about potentially what could be getting in the way of a student's academic success. So they're seeing it as incredibly a useful indicator that helps them to intersect the work around the health and physical and behavioral health of a student and the academic success of a student and the ability to do cross-sector partnership to reduce absenteeism. So just like public housing, I think the public health sector is seeing chronic absence as a way in really developing strategic partners between the two entities. So absolutely, and school-based health centers and the National Nurses Association and so many others are absolutely seeing this intersection between health, housing, and attendance, and also the National Campaign for Grade Level Reading as well, are just a few. Oh, and then can I just say one more? I'm sorry, the Healthy Schools campaign has an incredible health toolkit, that school health toolkit that housing authorities could potentially utilize as well if you're exploring a school health strategy as part of your efforts to improve attendance.
Very cool. Okay, we'll make sure to include those resources in our follow-up email to attendees because that I'm sure will be very useful for them. And okay, so Cara and Ted, I had another follow-up question for you all. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the parent portal you're using to help families become more engaged in this attendance work.
Ted, I can cover that. The parent portal is actually something that the school district has. So that particular example I was saying is from the Highline School District, which is just south of Seattle. And really the way that was used for this is that the event was designed to allow parents to, say, get on their phones or get on the computers and, get an account and learn how to access that parent portal and learn where they can find information on academics or attendance. So it's not something that CLPHA has. We that's a school district thing. But one thing that we want to do in our community spaces and our after-school programs is really do that authentic family engagement that builds the family's skills and abilities to be advocates for their students and to monitor their academic progress.
Got it. Okay. Very cool. And then Cara and Ted, you also mentioned how you are working kind of across departments within the Housing Authority on this initiative. I was wondering if you could expand a little bit more on that and maybe talk about some of the challenges that you faced in bridging those gaps between departments, and then also just some of your successes as well.
Ted, do you want to say anything, or do you want me to do this?
Yeah, no, I can share. I think it's evolved a little bit every year in terms of the other departments being engaged. I think the first year it was really just property managers that we were kind of reaching out to and talking with because we wanted to put banners and signs up. And then I think, every year we've done the campaign, which is really 3 years now, or maybe even 4 years. The word of mouth, I think, grew even inside our own organization. I was working, kind of to plant seeds about the importance of school attendance. So in opportunities of our executive director speaking in front of the whole organization, trying to get him to talk about school attendance and trying to raise overall awareness of the issue, which I think played into the ease of going to new department directors and saying, hey, we have this new idea this year. We're trying to expand our reach through the campaign. And I think for the most part, folks have been very receptive. There's no mandates to any leadership across the organization to participate in the initiative. And so these are all, directors and senior managers that want to take on the issue themselves and participate internally in planning efforts. I don't know if Cara mentioned that, but that's something we do internally as well, is create a space for our team members inside of KCHA to kind of come together, and we do essentially kind of a campaign planning inside of KCHA. Cara, I don't know if you want to add any more to that, but that's kind of how we've approached the expansion of the different departments.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And in the timeline, I was not explicit in that. So we do have something similar to the regional kickoffs, is I work with different departments, and it's voluntary, and we look for those champions that want to do this. We have a lot of coworkers that are really mission-driven and want to, really do to help residents. And so this is a way for them to plug into something that's pretty different than their job and feel like they're making a difference.
Great. Very cool. Okay, well, I want to give a huge thank you to our 3 wonderful presenters. Sue, Cara, and Ted, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I will be sending a very comprehensive follow-up email with all of the resources that were discussed on the call, as well as the webinar recording, so look out for that. Also, wanted to give a quick plug for the Housing Is Summit, which CLPHA is putting on for the 5th time now this year. It will be May 16th and 17th, so make sure you register for that on CLPHA.org or housingiS.org. We would love to see you there. We will be talking about attendance for sure and other relevant education and health initiatives taking place at PHAs across the country. So thank you all so much for joining. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but I think it was a great webinar from our wonderful presenters. So thanks so much.
Thank you.